So welcome everybody. I am going to introduce you now to academic Divya Sharma, who will be leading this webinar today on the politics of sustainable food and sustainable development MSc. She's going to introduce herself. I'm going to disappear, but if you do have any questions, as I said, please do leave them in the Q&A, and I will now hand over to Divya.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And a very warm welcome to this webinar. As Ellen said, I'm an assistant professor in sustainable development at the University of Sussex. I work in the Science Policy Research Unit, and I've been around since 2017. And I've also been teaching on the MSc in Sustainable Development since 2019. So for quite a number of years now. What we will do today is that I'll start with a very short mini lecture on the politics of sustainable food, which is my research area. And this will hopefully give you just a flavor of the kind of teaching you should be expecting on the MSc. Following that, we will move into a sort of broad overview of the MSc in Sustainable Development as a whole. I also co-direct the MSc with a colleague, Dr. Sung-Kyu Kim, who's a lecturer in energy and sustainability. So let me just begin by so let's get into it. The politics of sustainable food. As I said, I've been doing research in this area for about 10 years now, largely in India, but also looking at what's going on in India is shaped by global forces and processes. So this is what we'll do. I'll do a brief introduction, go into framings of sustainable food systems, particularly starting with the SDGs or the Sustainable Development Goals. And then I'll just outline two different ways in which sustainable food has been conceptualized. So one is the notion of food security, and the other one of food sovereignty and food justice. And then we'll kind of look at, very, very briefly, insights from India in terms of what are the implications of seeing food systems through these two different lenses. Both in terms of understanding what's going on, the framing of the challenges and problems, as well as the kind of policies and practices that are being designed. And many would argue that these two framings are sort of competing perspectives, whereas others would argue that they are complementary, or they kind of build on each other in different contexts. Right. So hopefully I imagine most of you have heard about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which was a set of 17 goals that set the agenda for 2030 and were adopted by by all member countries of the United Nations in 2016. And as you can see, they are a very, very wide-ranging set of goals and targets, from thinking about poverty, hunger, reducing inequalities, to more directly, what we might think of as the sustainability agenda. So questions around climate change, life on land, life below water. Now, the interesting thing about the SDGs is that, unlike the preceding Millennium Development Goals, they address a wider range of themes, which also means that the sustainability agenda is defined in a fairly broad way. And the second is that they're not just directed at countries of the global south or the so-called developing countries, but they are meant to be global goals and targets, recognizing that, of course, we live in a interconnected world, and that what happens in countries of the global north shapes what goes on in countries of the global south and vice versa. Right. So we'll zoom into goal 2, which is which does have to do with food security and questions around food systems, more directly end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. So as you can see, food security is the kind of terminology and the concept that the Sustainable Development Goals are using. We're much below target in many of the areas. So more than 600 million people worldwide are projected to face hunger in 2030. There's been little to no progress on some areas, such as prevalence of anemia in women aged 15 to 49. In addition to this, of course, we know that the food industry or the industrial food system is one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. One of the things that you will encounter in the MSc is that we think about sustainability by foregrounding the relationship between the social and the environmental, right? So questions of ending hunger or achieving food security are not separate, but deeply connected to questions of environmental sustainability. Right. So, you can look at the various targets and indicators, but just to say that, they cover things like doubling agricultural productivity and incomes of small-scale food producers, to ensuring resilient agricultural practices that can adapt to climate change and extreme weather conditions. Many scholars have looked at the limitations and critiques of these SDG goals as well, particularly of SDG 2, while recognizing that we have this very broad consensus on how sustainability can be defined in this very, very comprehensive way, right? So one of the critiques is that the SDG 2, which is about ending hunger, emphasizes a very technical understanding of agriculture to meet certain universal and universalizing targets, meaning simply that there is less attention to regional or place-specific challenges in terms of the food systems. The other critique is that the ways in which targets and indicators are framed, they largely prioritize a market-led way of intervening and advocating for a greater role for private players, corporations, and individualization of responsibility and opportunities. Economic growth, technoscientific interventions continue to occupy a very central place in the framing of the SDGs. One of the other critiques is that the setting of the goals don't, in the ways in which it has been done, doesn't really tell us much about the values and the direction that will shape the process of achieving these goals, right? So how will these goals be achieved? And also they fail to address historical and political injustices that have generated contemporary inequalities and environmental degradation. They also tend to neglect or exclude knowledges and practices of people and cultures outside the scientific realm that can be critical in devising the steps forward towards sustainable transformations of agriculture and also food systems more broadly. As I said, the Sustainable Development Goals center the idea of food security. How is food security defined more generally in the institutional realm by organizations like the Food and Agricultural Organization or the World Bank? Is that food security exists when all peoples at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient and safe and nutritious food, which meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy lifestyle. As you can see, the emphasis here is on food access, right? At the household level, at the level of individuals. The competing framing of food sovereignty, on the other end, has a much more comprehensive view of sustainability embedded in it, which goes beyond just questions of access. So the global movement of international farmers organizations from many different countries across the globe defines food sovereignty, which, as I said, can be seen as a competing notion, as the rights of all people to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agricultural systems. So you can see there are already aspects that differentiate this from food security framing. It's about it's a rights-based approach. It's about culturally appropriate food, which brings in place or context. It centers ecologically sound and sustainable methods of production, and also local control and autonomy over food systems. So the second part of the definition, it puts the aspirations and needs of those who produce, distribute, and consume food at the heart of food systems and policies, rather than the demands of markets and corporations, and it defends the interests and inclusion of the next generation. Now, the question of next generation has been quite prominent in setting of sustainability agendas, going back to the first definitions of sustainable development set by the Brundtland Commission. La Via Campesina goes on to say food sovereignty is different from food security because food security does not distinguish where food comes from or the conditions under which it is produced and distributed because of its emphasis simply on access. National food security targets are often met by sourcing food produced under environmentally destructive and exploitative conditions, and supported by subsidies and policies that destroy local food producers, benefiting agribusiness corporations. So you can see here there's a critique of the industrial food system that might provide access in terms of the aggregate quantity of food produced globally, but does not necessarily address questions of justice, redistribution, as well as environmental destruction and extraction of natural resources. So a complementary understanding of food sovereignty, there is also this question of agroecology, which is seen as a tool for achieving food sovereignty, which basically suggests that we need to redesign agricultural systems in ways that maximize biodiversity rather than monocrops of some key crops like wheat, rice, and maize, and simulate interactions between different plants and species that are part of holistic strategies to build long-term fertility and healthy agroecosystems. Now, this definition of agroecology comes from the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems, which also argues for a system redesign, unlike just a focus on standalone technologies like some hybrid seeds, or genetically modified crops, or pest management. So now I'll just move very quickly to sort of draw out some of the implications of these two approaches if we look at the context of India, where most of my research has been which centered on. So if we look at agriculture and post-colonial development in India in the starting from the 1950s, one of the key developments was the Green Revolution, which one could argue adopted the food security approach, right? So achieving national food security was the goal, and this was conceptualized as increase in aggregate productivity of certain and yields of certain food crops, particular just wheat and rice, by centering on particular areas where technological interventions like hybrid seeds, extraction of groundwater, increased use of fertilizer and pesticides would help achieve those high outputs in terms of yields of particular grains. This was also supported by a range of policy incentives to farmers through subsidies, but also through procurement of this food grain by the government. One critical thing is that this kind of a model was backed by the United States, as well as many international development organizations like the Rockefeller Foundation, not just in India, but in many other parts of the global South, Mexico, Tunisia, Egypt, parts of Southeast Asia. Since the 1990s, there's a growing literature where scholars across a wide range of fields, economics, social science, have documented the growing agrarian crisis in the Indian countryside, right? And this has included farmers not being able to make enough incomes, have viable livelihoods, despite having pretty high productivity in growing wheat and rice, especially in certain Green Revolution areas. It has also led to deepening regional and class inequality, as well as gendered and caste-based inequalities. A result of this has been, especially in the last few years, we've seen large farmers' protests in India surfacing over and over again. And we've also seen large farmers' protests in many other parts of the world, which arguably suggests that the unsustainability of the industrial food systems model based on extraction of resources is coming to a kind of saturation point, also because groundwater depletion, pesticide pollution, the consequences of all of this are quite visible in many of the regions that were at the forefront of producing food in this model. As a result of this, we've had many struggles for agroecological transformations, proliferating in different parts and regions of India, which are aiming to kind of repair the socioeconomic as well as the ecological crisis shaped by industrial agriculture. What this involves often is shifting or trying to shift farmers to more natural farming methods, reducing their dependence on external inputs like fertilizer and pesticide, the costs of which have increased significantly over the last few decades, which has led many farmers to go deep into debt, right? So moving towards natural farming practices is not just about ecological sustainability, but also economic viability of small-scale farming. Restoring biodiversity, based on methods like farmer-to-farmer knowledge exchanges, valuing place-specific knowledges of ecosystems, as well as producing food that aligns with uh, cultural preferences of regions, which are often connected to the ecosystems in which they are situated. There are several challenges to these projects. I've worked with the agroecological movement in Punjab, which was one of the kind of seen as the epitome of the Green Revolution, and where the challenge of transformation is a very, very acute one, because shifting to natural farming in very degraded ecologies is not always easy. It's also not easy when the policy support and infrastructure is geared towards industrial farming. The ways in which I've looked at this is through ethnographic, qualitative study in some of the villages, interviewing people, oral histories with farmers who are involved with these movements, looking at their visions and agendas for food sovereignty and sustainable food, but also looking at the challenges that they are facing in achieving these transformations, right? So if we look at these struggles, they broadly align with the conception of food sovereignty that I outlined earlier. Some of these organizations are also part of the broader international movement, La Via Campesina, that have built this sort of coalition around food sovereignty globally from the grassroots. So food sovereignty then goes beyond ideas of national level food security, but also beyond individual and household level access to food, because it centers community-based practices, value of small-scale food production, and also place-based ecological relations, right? In one way, agroecological movements have been successful because there is now a growing recognition by state governments in India, also by some international development organizations, that this can be seen as a viable alternative to the industrial model, even though in the mainstream discourse, there are still there is, to some extent, still an undermining of some of these approaches as being unscientific. But there has been an inclusion in policy and institutional agendas to some extent, right? And this has partly been possible because of global and regional level alliances between movements that have then been able to exercise pressure and also create a kind of broad-based consensus around agroecology. Scaling up, however, can also mean the appropriation of agroecology as just another technological fix, and removing it from the agendas of justice, redistribution, and democratic organization of food systems, as several scholars have highlighted. So that was a very, very quick overview of a very broad field of study. So I want to end this part of the session just by a concluding discussion on why thinking about conceptual framings of sustainable development matters, right? Because if you just look at this one example of food security versus food sovereignty, it tells you that concepts help us think about what are the underpinning assumptions, interests, and exclusions that are embedded within certain approaches, framings of problems in different ways, which also then determines the kinds of solutions and interventions that are designed. So concepts and theoretical framings are useful as analytical tools. I'm sorry, I don't know. Yeah, so concepts and theoretical framings are useful as analytical tools for understanding complex problems, but it's not just an academic analytical exercise because they also have implications for policy and practice. And they also help us think about how different scales articulate with one another, right? So what's happening at the local, regional, national, global level, uh, how those interactions unfold, and how they are shaped by power relations, which is crucial for understanding sustainable development challenges. So some of this is quite core to what the MSc in Sustainable Development is about, beyond the theme of food. Um, and hopefully this is sort of demonstrated to you in a very, very quick way. So I will move on to talking about the course as a whole. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm also one of the course conveners for the MSc. So why study sustainable development? Um, this degree in particular and sustainable development as a field of study has of course gained traction in the last few decades because we are facing massive sort of challenges, climate change, but also challenges around increasing social inequality, which intersects with environmental unsustainability in multiple ways. So the degree is meant for you to gain a very rigorous interdisciplinary training, which is largely within the realm of social sciences, for understanding, framing, and addressing complex sustainability challenges. The degree, our MSc has a particular focus on critically evaluating the role of science, technology, and innovation in both producing unsustainabilities historically in the contemporary moment, as well as then looking at the potential of science, technology, and innovation in addressing some of these challenges, right? And innovation here can mean scientific and technical innovation, but it can also mean social innovation in terms of civil society organizations, community-based practices, etc. So the crucial thing is that the degree is interdisciplinary, and that's because sustainable development as a field of study has to be interdisciplinary in order for us to be able to address some of these very complex challenges. It prepares you for sustainability careers in policy, in public policy, in research, in consultancy, based in firms, in the private sector, as well as in international development and civil society organizations. Many of our graduates also go on to do a PhD after this degree in the kind of broad area of sustainability. So who should take this course? The degree is designed in a way that is appropriate for people coming from various disciplinary backgrounds, right? So we have people in the course who whose first degrees are in engineering, psychology, sciences, but also in social sciences and humanities subjects such as English, history, geography, etc. Um, and um, and there are people who are looking to make a shift towards more sustainability-oriented careers, but also sustainability is becoming a big part of most sectors that you can possibly think of. Um, so the design of the degrees is meant to sort of give everyone a shared understanding of concepts and vocabularies and debates and challenges around sustainability through the core modules. So that regardless of the kind of disciplinary or professional background that you're coming from, you will be able to jump into the coursework effectively. Right. So, so what you will learn, I've already outlined some of it, but the way in which we are thinking about sustainable development in the course is quite comprehensive. It's about both social and environmental sustainability and their intersections. You will develop a very broad-based interdisciplinary training. We largely draw on ideas and concepts from these fields of study that you can see on the slide. So the first three fields, development studies, science, technology, and society studies, and innovation studies, are interdisciplinary fields, right? And the last four are particular disciplines, but have concepts, for example, I draw a lot on political ecology, which largely is a field that comes from human geography and anthropology. So what you will learn in the degree is how to use some of these theories, socio-ecological theories, and evaluate technological innovation for designing of effective policies and practices for sustainable development. These sorts of skills are in demand in the sort of international development space. So organizations like the World Bank, affiliates of the UN, FAO, EFAD, but also NGOs at different levels, government bodies, as well as firms and in the private sector, both in the global north and the south. Right. So hopefully through the lecture, you've already got a flavor for why understanding of theoretical frameworks, concepts, and framings of sustainable development policies and practices globally is important, and that's a lot of what you will get in the course, especially through the core modules. In addition, there'll be a lot of insights through case studies, examples of ongoing research that is being done by faculty within the department on very specific sustainability policies and practices in a very wide range of domains, such as energy, food, agriculture, manufacturing, supply chains, education, climate justice, at different scales, and both in contexts in the UK, EU, North America, but also in the global south. We will do quite a bit in the MSc on evaluating different models of innovation, scientific and technological practices, and how they can be harnessed for enabling more socially and ecologically just futures. Beyond the specific content, I think it's the degree also helps you to learn some of the methods and tools which are more widely transferable, especially on policy analysis, design, and practice, a range of research methods and analytical skills, both quantitative and qualitative, that are useful if you end up doing further research, but they are also useful in consultancies and in other kinds of sectors. The assessments, there's a wide variety of assessments, and one of the things that you will learn is also how to communicate analysis to both specialists and non-specialist audiences, right? because especially beyond research and academia, you would be communicating analysis largely to non-specialist audiences, whether it's through writing policy memos or doing group presentations, etc. You will also learn how to work effectively in very diverse teams. So our cohort is always quite international, multidisciplinary, people coming from various professional backgrounds and contexts. And beyond sort of engaging with the faculty, I think one of the most enriching parts of the MSc is also the interactions you will have with your peers and the networks you'll develop through that. So this is sort of the broad structure of the degree. These are the 4 core modules that provide the kind of grounding, conceptual and theoretical, as well as methodological. And then you also will be doing a dissertation in the summer that allows you to go deeper into an area that's of interest to you. The optional modules look at a range of different thematics. So thinking about innovation, science and technology, but also energy and development, industrial systems, AI and global digital policies. You will sort of think about things like you can think about things like grassroots innovations, and depending on what sort of areas interest you. All right, so just a few quick words about the department, which will be where you will be situated, which is the Science Policy Research Unit, which has been one of the world's leading centers for leading research on sustainability transformations, as well as science, technology, and innovation policy. The key sort of distinctive thing about the center has always been that faculty here do a lot of applied research in areas such as just energy transitions, governance of agricultural biotechnologies, ecosystem services, grassroots innovation, industrial decarbonization. And a lot of this research influences and shapes policy and practices in the real world, right? So you will join a very diverse and intellectually rich and friendly community where you can explore your interests and develop your skills for a career in sustainability. You will have plenty of opportunities to engage with the faculty beyond the classroom and through specific modules. That's just a snapshot of some of the research centers we have within SPRU, but also in the wider business school, right? So things like digital futures at work, there's a center for inclusive trade policy, the Energy Demand Research Center, Bennett Institute for Innovation and Policy Acceleration, and all of these research centers are doing very exciting, cutting-edge work within the field of sustainability and innovation policy. So our weekly seminars and other events that are led by some of these research centers are great opportunities to engage with academics as well as your peers, and sort of go beyond the scope of the structured curriculum of the degree. We also do lots of interesting activities. So Sussex, is very privileged as a university to be located in the South Downs National Park. This is a recent walk we did with our current cohort, and it's quite a long tradition within SPRU to do these workshops where we explore the local area, and also talk about some of the ongoing conversations in the classroom, and also current debates and policies, as we get to sort of interact in more informal settings. And that's an image from a recent early careers conference on sustainability transformations that was hosted by us in the department, led largely by our PhD researchers. In addition, there are lots of careers talks with alumni and events with industry policy experts and practitioners, from various organizations like the WTO or the UK conglomerate for sort of circular economies, etc. So in terms of your career, I think studying sustainable development gives you an excellent foundation for working in a wide range of sectors, as we've talked about a bit already. A multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary training provides a wide set of sort of transferable skills, particularly the focus of the MSc is on policy analysis and design, but also more broadly on analytical skills. And academics in SPRU have a wide range of engagements beyond academia, right? So with policy experts in different countries, for example, the TIPSI, which is the Transformative Innovative Policy Consortium, works with lots of partners in Latin America, in 3 countries in Latin America, in Africa, working on all sorts of projects in partnership with community-based organizations and universities in those countries. For example, looking at mobile schools for nomadic communities in Kenya, or thinking about sort of grassroots innovations, and how communities are working to kind of scale them up. So all of these non-academic or engagements beyond academia, I think, are really useful ways to think about and practically sort of take steps towards building your career, and you will have the kind of networks and support that you will need to do that within SPRU. Our graduates have gone on to work in business and consultancy organizations, government ministries, local municipalities and bodies of sort of local government, NGOs, international organizations like the WWF or the Worldwide Foundation in the UK, think tanks that do research, as well as for a range of social enterprises and non-profits, and quite a few also go on to do a PhD, either straight after the master's or after a few years of working in other areas. Entry requirements. So you can see the entry requirements here. You should have a lower second-class undergraduate honors degree or above. And as I mentioned, your qualification can be in any subject. You may also be considered for the course if you have any other professional qualifications, and, for example, relevant work experience. You can read about the details of the entry requirements in the online prospectus. Again, there's a range of fees and scholarships that are specific to particular areas of study, as well as depending on which country you're located in. And the most useful thing for finding out what is most relevant to you is by going to the to this particular tool on our website, where you can actually look up based on your location as well as the subject area or the degree that you're applying for. It just sort of filters out the scholarships that are relevant to you specifically. Very, very briefly, why study at the business school? We're a mid-sized business school where there is a lot of collaboration going around that happens across disciplines, right? So Science Policy Research Unit is already an interdisciplinary department, but then we also have colleagues in economics, in management who are also working on sustainability challenges or looking at its relationship with work and employment. For example, the Circular Economy Research Group. And so it's a very vibrant community that does center interdisciplinary collaboration. And there is a lot of there's a lot to be sort of gained from that. We rank very highly in several rankings, particularly the being number one in development studies. That's reflective of the work that's going on in SPRU, but also more widely in the university, in the School of Global Studies, the Institute of Development Studies, and also, SPRU in particular has been ranked amongst one of the top science and technology policy think tanks in the world. The business school is also accredited by a range of prestigious sort of schemes, which is a recognition of the high quality of teaching that is provided across our degrees, and you will sort of benefit from that because a lot of these accreditations are recognized by employers. That's just a snapshot of the business school alumni from various degrees, including from our MScs and the Science Policy Research Unit. And you will have an opportunity through our alumni team to be able to connect with alumni, particularly in the fields that you're interested in. And so there's a lot of effort to sort of build the alumni network and also have talks, etc., periodically from some of our alumni who are now working in various kinds of organizations. There's also a dedicated careers and employability team that provides specialist support throughout your studies, from identifying specific areas, organizations within your field of interest, as well as support with things like how to write your CVs and design your craft your applications. And this support is available to you while you're at Sussex, but also for up to 3 years after you graduate. And a lot of this support is provided also through ongoing events. So for example, the career and employability team recently had an event that was focused entirely on green jobs and green employers. All right, so I'm going to try and wind up now very, very quickly. Brighton is a beautiful place to live. And, I moved here to work at Sussex, and it's been a really, really enjoyable place to live. You have the beach, you have our beautiful campus, which is located in a South Downs National Park. So it's really quite a unique combination of particularly if you're interested in being outdoors, etc. A range of student support services, which are now sort of, there's a purpose-built student center, which is sort of a one-stop shop for accessing all of these services, including well-being support, money advice and financial support, student academic success advisors that can help you with study skills, writing skills, well-being ambassadors, and also dedicated support for international students. The library is open 24 hours. There's loads of other facilities on campus, including gyms, supermarket, health center, the many cafes and restaurants, all of which sort of hopefully help our students build a rounded, holistic life while they are studying with us. All right, so that was a very, very whirlwind sort of tour of the course, what you'll get at Sussex more broadly. And I'm going to hand over to Tashi, who's our recent graduate from the MSc in 2023, and is now working as an international environmental policy consultant, and has generously agreed to give us some time today to talk to you about his experience at Sussex.
What? Hello, can you hear
Tashi,
me?
yeah. Oh, yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. So very briefly, I will talk about my experience at the University of Sussex in MSc in Sustainable Development today. So again, let me introduce briefly. I'm Tashi Kawamura, originally from Fukuoka, Japan, but now I'm living in Tokyo for work. So as I've been introduced, I studied MSc Sustainable Development from 2022 to 2023 after working at an advertising company for 3.5 years. So I chose to study the MSc in Sustainable Development because I've been interested in environmental protection since I was little. Sustainable development covers various aspects as it's introduced in today's seminar as well, including the environmental protection. And also, SDGs requires developed countries to community as well. So not only developing countries, but developed countries like Japan has to work on it as well. Also, it helps me broaden my perspective, not only environmental protection, but also other aspects as well. And then I chose to study at Sussex or in Brighton because so others, as I introduced, Sussex is well known for development studies, and the course covers diverse issues related to sustainable development. And also, it helped me broaden my perspective. So not only environmental protection, but also development related issues as well. So development areas were so very new to me. So it was a new opportunity to get into the space as well. Also, my master's dissertation was about how so-called biodiversity credits foster nature positive economy. And then that dissertation covered innovation, policy, economics, and development studies, so various aspects. So it shows how interdisciplinary this course is. And then also, Brighton is a nice and small city with a beautiful nature, so I really liked it. Also, the course, MSc Sustainable Development, helped me in my career in the way it helped me to get into the international politics space. So I'm working in the international environmental policy area. So I was able to study ideas of sustainable development and also how policies work, and also international and domestic policies work. And then discussing with diverse people, diverse students in various accents is also helpful for me right now, because I need to work with like lots of like diverse people as well. And also I need to write like lots of reports. So when I after doing this course, I wrote lots of essays and dissertation as well. So it helped me with my current job as well a lot. So now I work at a private company. It's called X Research Institute. And I help mainly the Ministry of Environment of Japan with like negotiations at international conferences, such as conference of parties, so-called COP, of a few multilateral environmental agreements, so-called MEAs, and other international frameworks on sound chemical management. And also I help the ministry implement MEAs within Japan, and also help other developing countries, mainly Asian or Southeast Asian countries. And then I have like so many good memories and experiences in the business school in Sussex. I reckon the business school has lots of events with free food, so that was very enjoyable as well. And then I joined a few webinars from Spirit to explore all my personal interests further. Then I also joined a lots of postgraduate networking sessions to broaden my networking at Sussex, and also after after graduation as well. And then I reckon Spirit offers a Spirit drink on Fridays. And then I sometimes like join the session to discuss the like innovation or sustainability related issues. I also make new friends as well. So that was very quick. I hope it helped to understand the course more. Let me know if you have questions. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tashi and Divya. That is the end of our webinar. I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, so we've got a few questions that have come through, which we'll try and go through now. We may run over slightly. If you can't join us for the whole webinar, a recording will be sent out, so you'll still see the answers to these questions in that recording. The first question we've had come through: how many optional modules are students expected to select during the MSc course? And is there a recommended number that students usually take for a balanced workload management?
Thanks. So the structure of the course is that you do 4 modules in the first term and then 4 modules in the second term. And so, yes, there is, everyone takes a standard number of courses and credits. So out of the first 4 in the autumn term, you have 3 core modules, and then you choose 1 optional module from 2 options. And in the spring term, you have 1 core module, and then you choose 2 other options from a broad set of options, and 1 option from the 2 quantitative methods modules, right? And then, of course, there is the dissertation in the summer term, which is 60 credits. And all of your other modules are 15 credits each.
Perfect. Thank you. The same person has followed up, basically saying that they have chosen the quantitative methods module as an optional subject. Could you please clarify which statistical tools and software like SPSS, or Stata are taught in this module, and to what depth?
So I think I wouldn't be able to address the specifics of the tools, but if you send me an email, I can check with the module convener and get back to you. But there are 2 quantitative modules. One is an introductory level module for people who don't have perhaps a lot of background or statistical training before coming to the course. And then the second one is a more advanced level quantitative module. So if you already have a basic understanding of quantitative analysis, then you would end up taking the more advanced module.
Thank you. I've also put in, for those with more general questions as well, the pg.inquiries and the pg.applicants email. If you do have general questions, you can also email us there. A follow-up to that, wanting to understand the difficulty of the module, would having a basic understanding of statistics like mean, median, standard deviation, correlation, regression, and probability be sufficient to manage the coursework, or does it require a more advanced foundation in statistics and coding skills?
Right. So as I said already, I think there are, so you do have to do one quantitative module, that's a requirement, but you can choose between two, one which is a more introductory level, and that's designed in a way that's accessible to everyone, even if you don't have any sort of foundational training in statistics and quantitative analysis. And the second one is a more advanced one for people who would like to pursue that.
Perfect. Thanks, Divya. How do the quantitative skills taught in this module enhance employability in the UK, particularly in roles related to sustainable development and impact evaluation?
Right. So the second quantitative module, which is the more advanced one, is called quantitative analysis for STI, which is science, technology, and innovation policies. So the training is sort of geared towards how you would apply quantitative methods if you end up working in the innovation policy space. So you will be doing working with case studies, examples, etc., that are very specific to areas of science, technology, and innovation policy, which would be helpful if you end up sort of working either in consultancies, but also think tank organizations. Whereas introductory course would help you to, at the very basic level, read and understand quantitative data and analysis, which is always useful in sort of sustainability thinking, even if you don't employ those tools for your own kind of analytical work.
Perfect, thank you. And just one more question left, because I believe there was a question for Tashi as well, but he has answered that. So your answer should have come through to the person who asked that question, to Tashi. Final question, what is the average number of students in the department sort of per session?
Yeah. So on the MSc in Sustainable Development, we generally have anywhere between 30 to 33 to about 40 students in the cohort. So it's a good enough number where you are able to, develop or have sort of interactions with your cohort in a meaningful way. On each module, the number might be higher depending on, because some modules are taken by people from various courses, right? So you could have modules that have about 50 to 60 students, but I would say for most, and those are, particularly, for example, the methods module will have a larger number of students. But for most modules, you would have, anywhere between 15 to 30 students.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So that was the last question that we've had come through. As I said, I popped the two kind of main inquiries emails. If you do have general questions, if you haven't applied, it's pg.inquiries@sussex.ac.uk. And if you have already made an application and you're inquiring on the status of that application or anything else, it's pg.applicants@sussex.ac.uk. A recording will be sent out after this for those who couldn't make it, and also for those who have registered as attended. So you should receive that, I believe, tomorrow. Other than that, it just ends to say thank you so much, Divya and Tashi, for hosting this webinar today, and thank you so much for all our attendees. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.